All right, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Chronicles of a Virgo Podcast. And as usual, I'm your favorite Virgo host, Shakita Johnson. So thank you guys, for joining me back for another lovely episode. And as mentioned last week, I am doing a mini sexual assault awareness series to raise more awareness around just sexual assault. Last week, you guys got to hear more in depth about my situation, as well as my whole healing process and how some of those aspects are going. So this week, to continue the raising of the awareness, I feel like I used too many words. To finish raising awareness, I had to bring a guest on with me this week. And I feel like it's important to also think in different aspects when we're thinking about abuse, especially sexual assault, because many times I think when people think of sexual assault, they automatically think female, but that is not always the case, right? So with me today, some of you may remember him from one of our lovely, definitely interesting candid conversations last year. I have with me today Mr. Ennun. How you doing today, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing lovely. Despite the allergies, I'm good.
Right. It's getting us all, isn't it?
Yeah. So thank you for joining me today for this, I don't want to say interesting conversation, but important conversation, and for just being vulnerable and telling your story. So before we get started, of course, we got to do our lovely mental health checks. So I think you remember how we do that. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your mental health today? 5 being you're in a good space, and 1 being I'm okay, have some room for pouring, but I'm managing.
5.
Okay, we're gonna 5 it out. All
We're
right.
gonna go ahead and 5 it out today. You know what? We always good. We always good.
All right, that's what I like to hear. And I'm gonna 5 it out right with you. Again, despite the allergies, my face looked so flushed and red, but I was like, what the hell? I gotta stick this thing out. But yes, I'm gonna give myself a 5 today as well. And again, the purpose of the mental health checks is to encourage all of you guys to take the time out to check in with yourself internally, see how you feel, and just, take space. It's a lot going on, unfortunately, in this hectic world of ours. So it's always good to just reassure yourself that you are safe, you're okay. And of course, if you are not okay, please, find some supportive person or support, or someone that can help you navigate your feelings and figure out what's going on. All right. So, sir, let's get into this conversation. And I just want to issue a trigger warning prior to us getting into the conversation, as I did in my last episode last week. I do hope that you guys stay to the end. You never know what you can learn from this or how something may resonate more with you. So just wanted to issue a little trigger warning. Some of the things that may be said from this point on may be a little triggering for some of us. All right. So, Mr. Ennun, this unlike the last encounter that we had where the audience didn't get to know anything about you, can you tell everyone listening who is Mr. Ennun?
Hmm. Well, young, eligible bachelor. Great job. No, let me stop kidding.
I knew it. I knew it was about to start somewhere.
Hey man, I have to throw a joke in there, man. Listen, just because we're talking about something serious doesn't mean we always have to be serious. Got to keep it, what I'm saying. So let me see. How would I describe me now? Me now, I would say I've moved past a survivor to a thriver. So if I was to describe myself, I took my experiences and the things that I've overcome, and I've used it as fuel to be able to power, my goals and, the things that I wanted to accomplish, as well as help others. So me sharing my story and the things that I've experienced, I wanted it to be as almost like a signpost that you can actually, overcome these kind of difficulties and still find yourself in a somewhat healthy state. Because I feel like all of us are just somewhat healthy. I don't think there's anybody that's just 100% healthy. So we're all somewhat healthy, right? Now, what level on that, where you're at on that meter of somewhat, that's up to you. But everybody's somewhat healthy. We're aiming to try to be that 100%. So I think I'm, definitely trying to stand as an advocate for people to be like, hey, man, listen, you can overcome a lot of traumatic things and still find yourself some kind of sense of normalcy, some kind of sense of peace, some kind of sense of, health, So that's who I am now. Right
Okay,
now, if you want me to
I
get
like
into
that.
details, like 33. um I currently have two kids, a 14 and a 13-year-old, which is going to tie to the situation that I'm going to tell you about eventually. And I am still in the military, but currently transitioning out of the military um into the civilian space. Also a DBA candidate, so a doctoral degree candidate. I'm working on my third book. My first one was called Hofu, an African American horror story, and that pretty much outlines the experiences and some other ones that I've kind of went through in my life, and how I've kind of pushed past that. Then another one was a collaboration book with several people. Um, one being Dr. J. Cole McCowan, and it's called Unmasking the Truth Behind I'm Good. And that basically talks about how we use this guise of being I'm good, especially in our community, of saying I'm good when we're not. This idea that everything is straight, I'm not going to talk about it, I'm going to be silent, instead of really addressing issues that are present. And then the last one I'm writing, which is actually going to tie to a podcast that I'm going to try to start too, because someone has been pressuring me to do it. It's called The
Yes.
Uncommon Sense. And that's the one
Yes.
I'm working on. And that's pretty much giving, my tidbits of wisdom and, daily things that you could use to kind of remind yourself. So that's where I'm at today.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And everything you said was wonderful. And I definitely agree that once you get in the space of healing, and I know me and you have talked outside of this conversation about just overcoming things and healing, but once you get in this a certain space of healing, like the traumas and different experiences you have experienced, you're able to elevate from them things, and you no longer let them things hold you burdened to the shackles that you were once confined to. I myself didn't realize that until last year, late 2021, up until last year. I didn't realize that my sexual abuse was literally dictating me as a person, and everything and everything I thought I was, and all of my experiences. And it was really for me to like do another level of healing and really come out of that victim mindset to be in the space that I'm in today. Now, that's not me saying that I have 100% healed from that, right? Absolutely not. Do I believe that healing is possible from any sexual trauma? I do. And, not saying like, oh, overall you are 100% healed, but there are different levels to it, just as well as there's different levels and layers to sexual assault. But one thing that I learned is like, I'm not going to give up. And there's always a bigger purpose in each of our stories. So, speaking of stories, let's get into it. So, you are a sexual assault survivor, correct?
Absolutely. Um,
Okay.
so throughout my childhood, I've experienced different levels of sexual abuse, molestation, and even also, you say grooming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it happened on different fronts. It happened in different states, and it happened from different sexes. So I've definitely been, sexually assaulted, molested by a male and a female. And I'll tell you something about when you're sexually assaulted by a male, right? When you're sexually assaulted by a male, um, you start to bring this question of your sexuality at some point,
Mm.
right? You start to be like, hey, some people, they feel like you got to be over masculine, right? As they'll call it, overly aggressive in order to be able to defend and define your sexuality because of something that happened to you. And you don't have to do that.
Mm.
Um, you're perfectly fine. Everyone has, those intrusive thoughts, if you've experienced those things before, that can come on you, you know what I'm saying? But trust me, it's perfectly normal. It happens and stuff like that. So don't feel any kind of way. As far, especially, back in those days when I was younger and I didn't understand what was going on and what happened to me. Also, understand this, that sometimes your response to trauma can happen at a later time because you're unaware of what's happening at the time that you're in it. So you may become aware of it some years later, and now you're going through the trauma response, right?
Give me
so
an
you're
example.
wondering why.
Give people an example, because
A good example.
I feel like that's a very good point, because sometimes people feel like, well, if you're a victim of sexual abuse, you're supposed to act a certain way, dress a certain way, talk a certain way. You're supposed to remember every single event that happened during that time frame. But realistically, like, sexual abuse, just as well as any other abuse, doesn't have like an image, right? It doesn't have a timeline. So when you say sometimes those responses can show later in life, please explain what that means.
For instance, at the time when I was being groomed, right? So initially, when I was a young boy, and there was an older lady there was one of the older ladies who was having sex with me, right? She basically got to a point where she said that I had to have sex with her in order to have a place to stay and things of that nature, right? Initially, nothing was wrong with it, right? As a young male, I'm like, oh, shoot, older lady, she was kind of thick, whatever, right? I have no complaints. My hormones is raging. I'm about 14 years old. She's roughly about 38. You know what I'm saying? Nothing is wrong here, right? Nothing is wrong here in my mind. I'm like, oh, shoot. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm with an older chick. Hey, you know what I'm saying? Right? But then when it starts to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to feed you unless you do that. Or, you know what I'm saying? Oh, we have issues because you're not doing that. Because, oh, you're supposed to be operating in a man's place. And I'm like, bro, I'm not a man. Like, I'm a teenager. When you have to come to that realization as a teenager that you really are a teenager, whereas most of the times you're over here thinking, I want to be an adult, but you have to come to that like, whoa, I'm not ready for adulthood for real, because you're throwing all of these unrealistic ideologies and responsibilities on me that I'm not ready for. And you're saying, hey, you're a man, you're going to do this and you're going to operate like this. You know what I mean? And it was a really, really weird situation. And then trying to palm me off as a sexual healer to a group of other women, that was a whole nother situation too, that was engrossed in that particular one, and saying, oh, he's a sexual healer, you should sleep with him. So it was not just one instance, but it was like this group of weird stuff that was going on that I was involved in. So the reason why I'm saying that, I'm giving that little tidbit because it wasn't wrong then. It wasn't until I grew up and got out older that I realized, oh, shoot, I was molested. Oh, shoot, I was being groomed. Oh, shoot, I was being pawned off as a sex object. None of that hit me until later. So then when it all hit me, that's when I started to go through the emotions, of that particular thing for years, even though I went through my own sense of depression and things, other things, right, related to it. When I finally realized that this was wrong, I wasn't a teenager anymore. I was an adult in my 20s. I went to college and I was in a normal stuff. And then when I started learning about, oh, this is what sexual assault and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm a victim. I'm a victim of sexual assault. I'm a victim of molestation. I'm a victim. That's when everything really started to hit me and it became a reality, and when that reality finally struck, it really bothered me. It made me question a lot of things about myself. It made me extremely insecure. It made me feel like, am I really a man? Like, I allowed myself to be, to be manipulated and controlled. And you know what I mean? It was so many different factors that could hit you, and it affected my relationship with women. Because once I became aware, I actually went through a phase where I hated women, because I had been literally assaulted by so many different women in my life. And there's a plethora, you know what I'm saying? Probably about probably about 4 older women, you know what I'm saying, in my life that I really had an issue. And I was like, I was taken advantage of. I was manipulated, I was, rabbled into this whole situation that I had no understanding of. And because I thought, everything was okay, it was okay. And then when I finally got older, I was really upset. I was bothered. I was emotionally, traumatized. So I was like, I don't like women. You know what I mean? Not in a I like men situation, but as in I just don't like women. So I didn't realize I would start being aggressive in conversations. I would be, anytime they would say something, I'm snappy, I'm angry, I'm aggressive. Here's another way that I interpreted it. Everybody that told me that they loved me and cared about me had sex with me. Right? So I started to interpret love in a sexual manner. So then when I would get close to females, I would think that now that I care about them, it's time to have sex. Not because I wanted to have sex, but because that was how I showed you I loved you. And then there was a friend of mine who told me, they was like, hey man, chill out. And I was like, nah, like, are you not this? You know what I'm saying? I'm in my mind, I'm like, and I didn't understand it until they made me realize it. And one day I sat back and I was like, oh shoot. I was like, you know what? I was like, it's not that I want to have sex with you. I'm trying to show you that I love you, that I care for you. We've reached that point in our relationship. But anybody who has told me they love me and care for me took my body. So I felt like the ultimate sacrifice of showing love was giving you my body. You see? And a lot of people don't understand that, because that could be what's leading a lot of people to be sexually promiscuous and things like that, because I didn't know that's what it was. I'm like, I really care about you. I really have feelings for you. Let's have sex. Because that's what happened to me. Anybody say, I love you. I'm here for you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to nurture you. Let's have sex. Right? So that's how it can come out later and you don't even realize it. And it's affecting your relationships with other people. And you're like, why do I feel the need to have sex with everybody that I care about? Or why do I sabotage these relationships by making it sexual? Or why do I feel like I need to throw my body in this direction, in that direction? It could be tied to that sexual related trauma. You just didn't know because you weren't aware. That's why it takes self-awareness. That's why it takes therapy. That's why it takes, going in and looking at yourself and doing that work. It's important, because if you don't, you won't have that realization. And it's also good to have good friends who are going to keep you accountable and say, hey, I'm really your friend. I'm really here for you. You know what I'm saying? I see what you're going through and not judge you. That support system, important, right? Yeah. So.
Okay. That was a lot, but everything you said makes sense, and it resonates very, very, very too much well with me, especially the part of you feeling like my way of showing you that I love you is giving you my body, because I was groomed to give myself to someone that said they loved me. You know what I'm saying? So, my abuse started when I was a child as well. So that psychological wiring is what I perceive love to be. It was a weird type of protection. And as you get older, even though my situation had came out when I was a teenager and stuff like that, I really thought that after that point, it was kind of over. Like, it was settling down. It wasn't until college I started having night terrors or whatever. And the way my night terrors work is things will happen to me in those dreams, and I will respond physically, like in real life form. And once I'm awake and I'm trying to process things, I could not remember what happened in that dream unless it was something like devastating. And it always is something about someone trying to kill me or someone raping me. And thankfully I haven't had them in such a long time, but that is what all my dreams resulted around. And I got asked, I think last week in my episode, about if my sexual abuse had, messed up any of my relationships and friendships and stuff. For my friendships, for the most part, I think, like you said, if you have a solid group of supporters, friends that not only hold you accountable, but just can be supportive and sympathetic to your needs and things, that goes a long way. Relationship wise, the one problem that I had was oversharing too much, and I thought that was a protection for me, because I knew that there were things that I felt uncomfortable doing. There were a lot of things I was uncomfortable about when it came to men. Just like you said, women, I despised and hated men you know, it was really back and forth. Sometimes I liked you, sometimes I didn't. Like I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Like that's how my mind was working. And I really felt like no one got it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad you raised that point, because you just like helped something in my brain come full circle. You know what I'm saying? Um, but yeah, like I overshared so much stuff because I felt like if I tell you up front what is going on with me or what has happened, you would in some way like make me like I can't think of the word I want to use, but it would just make you look at me in a different space, but you would protect me. And that wasn't always the case. People, really hold in on a person's vulnerability, and every person that I did that with had really did me wrong,
But think about
And
this, right? Just to add to this, in that point, you felt the need to do that because of how little you valued yourself because of what people did to you as a child, right? That was a self-worth thing, right? So you felt the need to instantly go into defense mode, instantly go into protect yourself, instantly put yourself in a safe space, because when you were a child, you didn't have that safe space. With me, there was a time when I would go down to a park every day with a 38 special and play Russian roulette for over a month, because I didn't want to directly just kill myself. I wanted to leave it in God's hands, right? Because I didn't understand why my life was constantly in this space of being used and abused by people. I was just like, I don't get it. I don't understand why I'm constantly in a rut. I didn't understand what was going on in my own mind. I was confused. And I think that's something to really, really note. You may not even know why you're responding the way you're responding. You may have, one, blocked it out, two, be unaware of what's going on, or three, may not even interpreted it wrong, but your body and your subconscious mind knows, right? It's always aware. So now you're responding to that because something ain't right. And you're constantly going through these changes and you don't know why, right? And that people are looking at you like crazy. And it's not. It's just you're unaware of what is actually going on inside of you until that light is finally shown. And then once that light is shown, you're like, aha. Like you just said, you just had that moment where it helped the gears turn about something that you've been having going on. And you're like, that's what I've been trying to say. I've felt alone in this experience. I felt like nobody understood me. So that's a confusing state to be in. That's a very lonely space to be in, because you're like, how do I find the words to be able to tell you what's going on in here? Because sometimes I just don't feel like I have the words to say it, but I know something ain't right. So then you react. Right? Because remember, base instinct, fight or flight. So your body instantly starts to react. The stress, the anxiety, the depression, all reactions to the fact that we don't have the words. We don't have the capacity to be able to express what we really are going through. Right? And then somebody else may come and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is why it's great to have a community. This is what I'm going through. And this is how I feel about it. And you're like, aha, there it goes. Now that's going to help me on my journey. That's going to help me to be better. That's going to help me to attack the things that I've been trying to fight for all of this time. That was just my little input.
No, that was good input, and thank you for that, because everything made so much sense. And like I said, that literally something came full circle in my brain as you were speaking on that. And it is tough already feeling like your feelings are not valued and you don't have a voice. I say for a long time that I didn't have a voice. I mean, I had you hear me, but the voice in my experiences and my trauma, I did not control any of that for such a long time. So being in a space now where I can freely and openly talk about things and stuff like that, sometimes it is still a little difficult. And I'm in therapy, right? And let me be very clear when I say this, because I hate to hear, this is a pet peeve of mine. I hate to hear people always say, well, if this and that happened to you, you were abused, then you just need to go talk to me. You need to go to therapy. It is not that simple. You can be in therapy for years and do not break down all the barriers of your trauma or your whatever abuse or whatever you're going through. it can take time. I'm just thankful that I have a very tricky but good therapist and how she maneuvered me in my first couple sessions to talk about it. And any of my friends will tell you, once I realized what she was doing, it tore me apart because I was like, I don't want, like, this lady got me talking about stuff. And what happened from that, and from experience, once the more you talk about it, you start to realize pieces and parts of yourself that were tied to the things that happened to you. And I was like, man, this is just fucked up. And I'm like,
Yep.
okay, I want to do more because I don't want to be this individual no more. But what do I do to get past this? And it's just constant agonizing work,
Absolutely.
especially since it's like you're trying to turn back the hands of time for me, like in you childhood, and then move forward, and it's a lot. It can be very overwhelming. I'm thankful to be in a space that I'm in and to have good support and good community, like you said. And like I mentioned, like my abuse started in my own home where I'm supposed to be, safe, my safe
Safe.
haven. Can you tell a little more? And of course, like, you control this narrative and on what you say and how much you say. How did your abuse begin?
Okay, so I'm trying to think about how deeply I want to walk into this because it can get really long. So I'm trying to think of the short form. So let's start from this point. There came a point in time when my mom felt that she was sending me with a friend of hers who had swore up and down that she was going to be able to help me get my life together and turn around, because I was very angry. My father had gone to prison for 125 years. I won't speak on him because that's a whole nother topic for another situation. I was feeling some type of way. I had just left a compound that I was pretty much raised on for most of my life. It was a very strict, very chaotic kind of experience, and a lot of abuse and things happened in that place. And then eventually I come out, and then everything that I believed and that I was taught shattered.
Now, when you say compound, do you mean like, and this is just the purposes to give listeners more, I know, but to give them more input without going too far. When you mean compound, do you mean like organized religion?
Yeah, it was like an organized religion, an organized group.
Cult.
Yeah, I guess you can say that. You can call it a cult.
Okay.
Whatever. I mean, there was multiple factors to it, right? So there are some occultish kind of ways, but it was also a community as well, right? A large community that spanned multiple locations, multiple states, and multiple countries. And my dad was in charge. So there was that, and they had their cult followings within that, like any organization, right? So I'll leave that kind of right there. So once that situation happened and I separated from there, I tried to live with my mom. I ended up getting into a lot of situations with the law, joined gangs, and pretty much was acting out of anger. But prior to this, on this land, I had experienced some sexual assault as well from older people. It happened there as well. So also not understanding what's going on, that wasn't even a problem in my mind at the forefront. I'm just angry about so many things that I don't understand, but I'm angry. I'm roughly about 13 at the time, and I just start wilding out. I'm doing all types of insane stuff. My mom says, okay, I need to send you away. Just got arrested. Pretty much they was about to throw the book at me for whatever. And she was like, hey, I need you to go. So she sent me away to live with her friend. When she sent me away to live with her friend had swore up and down that, this was going to be the best move for me and blah, 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 blah. And this was the 38-year-old woman who initially started everything, right? When it comes to that. And that's when I had moved up to another state in the north. And This was the one who was basically saying, your mom is not sending me any money, which, hey, I do have to put that kind of on my mom. My mom did promise to be able to look out for me, and she sent me away, and then that was it. You know what I mean? And it wasn't the first time that my mother had done that. So now you also got to think, this is going to be a very good weapon. So remember this, people that groom people, they use abandonment as a tool. Okay. You know what I'm saying? They use abandonment as a tool. So when you feel that disconnection, when you don't feel like you have that protection or that safe haven, they'll use that in order to try to isolate you and to be able to sink their claws in you, especially when you're young. So that's something to take into account, right? So that was used as a tool. Your mom don't care about you, da 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 da. So now you got to be a man. How you gonna take care of things? Blah 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 blah. All the while, introducing me, into this sexual kind of relationship. So that started happening. I started to rebel after a while because I was like, wait, this is starting to get really weird. There was a lot of really, strange, odd things that was happening, because she was not only having a sexual relationship with me, but she also had a sexual relationship with another male that was outside the house, and then a female that lived up there as well. Right. So she was very highly sexual, and then also pawning me off as a sexual healer and all of these different types of things that was happening. So it was very weird. Even had tried to get her brother to kind of pressure me, but her brother was unaware of what was going on. So he thought he was pressuring me because I was a rebellious young dude who was not listening. But really what happened was he pressured me, and he was like, it was because of the situation where I started to be like, yo, I'm not feeling this. You know what I mean? So I thought that she initially dropped me off in the middle of the street because she just got tired of me. Found out later on it's because she got pregnant, and I was 14, 15 at the time. So yes, this is going to be, now, I don't know what happened to the child. I think she said she had like lost it or an abortion or whatever, that's what she said. So I didn't look into it at the time because, once again, I was a kid and I had nothing to do with it. After she dropped me off in the street, I was sleeping inside of abandoned apartments for a little bit. Then I ended up with somebody that I had met at her house. A guy, went to his house. I was staying there for a little bit. That was an entirely interesting situation. I met somebody who I think it's like his sister-in-law, who I'm still cool with to this day. She's really cool. She had like a little broken leg at the time, so she would be sitting there and we would talk a lot, and we're still cool to this day. He had his own stuff going on. Yeah. I'm not gonna walk into that situation, right? That was different. So he ends up introducing me to the main character. So let's say that this other woman, even though, she did her share of stuff and it was really crazy, she's on, and mind you, they all know each other, right? So this is where the story is going to get really interesting, because this turns out to be a big group of people, a ring, right, of people that I ended up in. And now I'm this young dude, and he introduces me to now the person who is also my kid's mother. You know what I mean? So she begins this grooming process. So she takes all of my feelings of abandonment, all of these feelings where I feel like my family is not talking to me, all that type of stuff. And she uses this as a weapon to say, I'm here for you. What she first did is bring me in as a child. She said, I was at the point now where I was just tired. I was like, I'm tired. I said, listen, I don't care no more. I was miserable. I was stressed out. I was eating out of trash cans. I was sleeping in abandoned apartments. I was doing whatever I could to survive. Anything that I could touch, I would sell to get money, whatever. So first she was like, here, she would give me she had like incense and oils and CDs and DVDs, and she would give me products and stuff like that. I'm gonna put you on. So I was selling, bringing her back money. So she put some money in my pocket. And at that point, I was picking up stuff from her, but I was still living with the dude. And then eventually she was like, you should just move here, blah, 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 blah. She said, you can be a kid. I was just like, man, this is a little sketch. Y'all don't even know me like that. Whoop-de-whoop-de-woo. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't know. She had affiliations to my father organization. She was like, yo, I know your father, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, yeah. Right. But somehow she convinced me. Eventually I decided, to stay up there and everything like that. And that relationship of me being a child lasted all of a week. And then eventually she had somehow spun it around where I had to be her spiritual husband and had to have sex with her. And all. It was just crazy. Like she mind warped the hell out of me. because you got to think I had grown up in an environment of a very outlandish kind of different religion, right? So I didn't grow up Christian and normal. I grew up believing in all of these other like different kind of belief systems. So what she did is she took that and used my lack of knowledge and understanding and lack of ability to fully process things. She used that to flip it and be like, this is true, this is not real. And then also she tried to say she was a tarot card reader and stuff like that, and that she read my cards, but really she was using information that she had gotten from the other lady, but I didn't know that. So I thought that she knew stuff about me that she wasn't supposed to. And I was like, whoa, oh my God. So I believed it. So when she told me something, I'm like, oh shoot, like she knows, and she used that to kind of manipulate me. And then that's where the sexual relationship came into. There was a lot of, interesting things that happened between that situation. She branded my stomach. So I have like these rings and stuff like that on my stomach and everything, almost like I was a property. She also had two old ladies up there who she convinced that were slaves. And, she would like punish them and do crazy stuff. I've seen her burn them with a frying pan, and I've seen them get beat with sticks. It was insane. Like I've seen a lot of crazy stuff in my life. God. Yeah, it was a very, very horrible experience. And honestly, there was times when I was just scared because I was just like, what's going to happen? She convinced me that if I left, it was just going to be this catastrophic thing. So I was really worried about leaving, so I was there for years, really concerned, and really felt like she was this extremely special person. And then if I left, everything was going to fall apart, and honestly, I didn't even find her to be attractive, like I was having sex with her out of obligation. It really was. Like, you got to think, I was 15 years old and she was 30. So she was 15 years older than me. And I was literally just like, or 15 or 14, I think it was 30 at the time. Yeah, it was one of those. But a significant amount of years. And she also had this other guy that was there that was like her baby father and everything like that. They were together and everything like that. And she convinced him that he was a servant. It was weird, like this whole situation. So me coming in as a young male, and there's all of these adults who's following this system, right? And everybody believes each other, and everybody's like, yeah, and I'm telling you, this is the truth. And I'm like, this is weird, but is it? Like, all of these people can't be crazy. Like, maybe I'm the person that's tripping. Like, maybe she is who I think she is, right? And it was just so many things that kept happening. There were mine, there was, her, another woman that was involved, mine, there was kids involved. It was so many different things that was happening. It really got to a point where she started throwing parties for her friends and making me and the dude dance for them and collecting money. And she would call it the House of Pleasures. Like, it was so much things, man. And then I ended up getting into dancing, and it was a lot of things that happened. I was working and giving her all my money, you know what I mean? So she basically pimped me. You know what I mean? So I went into this place where I was literally being like, not only objectified, but I was being pimped. I was being mind pimped. I was being manipulated. I was being branded. I was being scarred. She was doing all types of crazy stuff. Like, it was just an insane process overall. You know what I mean? And then at some point I believed it. And then, Stockholm syndrome, eventually I was like, yo, maybe I do love this woman. Maybe I do care. She almost convinced me when I was an adult to get married to her. You know what I'm saying? Almost. And I was probably about like 18. So I wasn't really an adult. I was still kind of young. But she had groomed me through this whole process. And I didn't leave until I was 19 years old. And the way that I left was to join the military. I literally had to lie to her and say, I'm joining the military so I can take care of you. So, yeah, I think I cut off at that point. Somebody got something to say.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, like, okay, so you're 19, you joined the military. What was the point? Like, what was the turning point for you? I know you said you eventually, as time went on, realized that this shit was not cool. Like, nothing that any people did. So what was that the turning point when you were like, I'm not going back?
Yeah, well, it was two different situations that happened. Number one, my sister came to live with me. And when my sister came to live with me, I was raising her. You know what I'm saying? So my younger sister came and she lived with us for a while. So I was raising her. So I was working and everything like that. And then the guy made a statement, you know what I mean? That really, really bothered me. He was like, oh, was she sent for me? And I was like, and mind you, this guy is in his late 30s.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I told the lady, I said, I'm gonna tell you something right now. And this is what woke me up. I said, if he touches my sister, I'm gonna kill him. I was like, I'm going to kill him. I don't play. And that was what woke me up. Number two, and this was probably one of the most scariest experiences I ever had in my life. And this is not going to be something that you think it is. I got to a point where she driven me so mad that I felt nothing. Like, I watched this woman break down crying over the loss of somebody in her family, just completely, and felt nothing. And that feeling, or that non-feeling, scared me so much that I was like, I have to get out of here before she turns me into a monster. I was like, this is scary. I was like, I understand what people who are probably serial killers feel at this point, this non-feeling, this emptiness towards another person showing extreme emotion when I should feel compassion. You've driven me so mad that I'm like, nothing. And I just felt nothing. And that feeling of nothing, was just so strange for me. And so, like, I don't know. And it's like when I finally broke out of that and I was able to have emotions, you know what I mean? I was like, I never want to feel like that again, or I never want to be in that space again. And that is another thing that woke me up. I was like, that is wild, so that is a very scary place to be,
Yeah.
So that was something else that woke me up as well. So it was that culmination. And then number three is when I went to Job Corps. So I went to Job Corps to try to get my GED and everything like that, right? So I wanted to get because I didn't have any education at this point, right? I'm young, I'm not in school, nothing. So I'm not being tracked at all. You know what I mean? And I was like, I want to get an education. I wanted to do something with my life. And I was like, man, I told her several times, I was like, I'm young. I want to be around people my age. And she was like, so you want to leave me? You don't want to be, you just want to go out to the way. And I was like, no, I'm a kid. Like, I'm young. Like, I'm like, I don't, I was like, and I literally told her, I said, you stole my childhood away.
Yeah.
And I was like, you took my childhood. Like, and I was like, I need it. She was like, I knew this, da, 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 all this manipulative stuff. So eventually she agreed to let me go to Job Corps, which is even sad, the fact that I said that she agreed to let me go. Right. Mm-hmm. So I went to Job Corps, and then I was around normal people because I wasn't cooped up in this house just with her and these people and her world and all of the other people that's coming in and filtering in. I finally got to experience people outside of that. And then when I kept going to Job Corps and I'm taking these classes and I get my GED and all that, and I'm just like, oh man.
Different life.
Yeah, what the heck? I don't want to be here no more. So that was probably the main reasons. And then what almost made me stay is when she got pregnant with my daughter. And she used that, of course, because I was trying to leave. Because I told her I'm going to leave. And then she magically got pregnant all of a sudden. And because at first she couldn't get pregnant, right? And then magically when I was an adult, the entire situation, manipulation, you know what I mean? But what was I gonna know? I came since I was like 14. I came out of a situation when I was already in a whole nother box, came out of that box for a little bit here and there, went back to the box, and then went into a even, different box that was similar, right? So then I was going from one type of trauma to the next, and it was relatable because it not only tied to it, but it also was similar. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm basically back home where I first started, where I'm being manipulated, abused, used, and all of these different things. So then when I finally broke away, when I was in the military, and I finally was like, I'm not coming back. You know what I mean? That's when the situation, I was like, I'm not coming back. That's when situations start breaking off. And then she also like stole all of my money by writing a bunch of false checks for my military. It was a lot of stuff. She did a lot.
Bro,
yeah.
she
she added insult to injury. Terrible person. But it's cool. At the end of the day, and then, when I went up to the bank and I was like, where's all my money? They were like, well, you've been writing checks. And I was like, wait, writing what checks? I didn't write that. And then
that is like, a criminal offense.
Yeah, they said, did you want to press charges?
Everything
like,
she was,
nah.
first of all, everything she
did was criminal. Yeah, it was all criminal.
Yes, like, but that right there is definitely criminal, and it doesn't take away from the sexual abuse, the grooming, all that stuff. And I'm so sorry, that you had to experience all of that, from the situations with your dad, your mom, them insane individuals. I'm sorry, because you didn't deserve it, right? None of us ever deserve it. Something that you said stood out. You said you told her you stole my childhood. She along with others stole your innocence. So you going in and out of all those different situations, it was because it was what was normal to you. Like it looked and felt normal because you were in it for so long. Opposed to, just like when you went to the army and stuff, that life seemed a lot different because it's like, okay, I've been in this life all of my life and now I'm seeing a total different world. It's like, oh my God, you know?
Well, funny, actually, I got to talk about that. Is it really that much different? Or did I find something that was similar in a whole nother way? Organized, groupthink, people telling me what to do. I literally, gangs, I went from one group to the next every time, seeking out what I first started with in my childhood. Every time going from one group to the next, they all were similar. It was the same thing. And it wasn't until now when I'm transitioning out that I'm like, okay, I realized I took, therapy and everything. Oh, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
So
I
you see
didn't
the
realize I
connection.
kept seeking the same thing over and over and over again because that was the familiarity, right? Or I kept finding myself in that space. Or even if you want to say I kept attracting it to me. You know what I mean? However you want to see, I kept finding these spaces. And that was my security and my comfort spot. Now, that doesn't mean that the abuse and all of the things that happened in between were what I was seeking, but I was seeking this group-oriented, group think, organized. This is how it's supposed to fit with, you know what I'm saying, autonomous kind of leadership and all. That's what I've kind of found, right? Over and over and over again. And now I'm finally like, whoa, that's attached to my trauma. Goodbye.
Yeah.
So when people ask me why you're getting out the military, they're like, why are you getting out? I was like, I'm done, because I started to realize that I use not that as an escape route, but I went from one trauma to the next trauma to the next trauma, adding up to a system of complex trauma. We're not even going to talk about the military trauma because we're focused on one other thing. We're going to just keep that there right now.
I can imagine. And of course, like you hear stories, you see things online, and me, honestly, like, not to say that I don't believe victims, but the things that I see online when it comes to like the military, for example, there's a weird cycle that's going on when female soldiers come forward about sexual assault. The recent cycle is they've been randomly dying. And it has been a paper trail leading up to their death that they reported it. These are the things that happened, and now they're no longer here. And there's no evidence to show what happened to them. So, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I can't imagine people in the military, because of the hierarchy that the military is getting rid of people that come forward with their story, so. And then I see, of course, like I come from a law enforcement military family background. So my mom she did the law enforcement side. All of my older cousins, they have retired or got forced out the military because they were in there too long. And my one older cousin, he actually retired as the colonel. So like I have heard, a lot of different stories and different things. And so I can just imagine the emphasis of trauma. And I'm glad that you were able to seek help, though, and your therapist, whoever your therapist was, shout out to them for making the connection of your childhood trauma and you went into the military and how those things were like kind of like one and the same.
Definitely.
Like I'm sitting here like,
oops.
Like what?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing when you see the connection. You're like, whoa. Now you think about how many people are actually, in these, these organizations, like not just that, fraternities. So you got to think, I'm a part of a lot of different organizations, and they're all.
You see my face?
You see what I'm saying?
Because I know.
It's all the same thing. It's boom. I kept seeking the same thing in different ways. And once I started to see that, I was like, oh, this all stems back to this child who was here on this compound in this place, who was raised this way, living like this. I was raised militant as a child, military, organized and having to do this. You know what I'm saying? Oh, this raised around a bunch of guys and stuff like that in the boys' house, not only military, but fraternity. You know what I'm saying? Gangs, survival, fighting. You know what I mean? All of these things all attached to this experience from my childhood, right? You know, the idea when you feel like you have to have this bravado, you have to be tough because you got to prove yourself. You know what I'm saying? Because you know what? I'm a man, so I got to constantly prove my sexuality. Nah, that's gay. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I don't do that, man. You know, nah, that's some girl stuff. You know, I'm tough. You in the gang, you like, bro, nobody gonna ever question me or think I'm soft. Soft, synonymous with what? Girl. Girl, synonymous with, you see what I'm saying? It's all the same thing. Everybody is constantly trying to prove their sexuality. Everybody is constantly trying to be affiliated with groups. You know what I'm saying? Because of whatever was happening in their childhood. So it all ties together in some way. All of our problems stem from our childhood. If we can go back and really reassess what happened in our childhood and really take a deep dive, we would probably be able to address a lot of the issues that we've had in our lives. We just have to go back, really, really introspect and really look and do that work, go through that therapy, look back and really see how all of this connects, because it does. And then you'll be able to start picking apart a lot of your trauma. You'll be like, oh man, that's what that was. That's because, you know, I used to get bullied in the third grade. And when I got bullied in the third grade, I was like, I'm never gonna be bullied again. So then, you know what, I became a bully. So I was like, I'm gonna be tough. You know, oh, this is because somebody touched me. So that's the reason why I don't like to be touched. Oh, this is because a man molested me. So now I don't like males. And I don't like when a male does that. You know, sometimes I sit down and I cringe because I have memories, because sometimes somebody smiles like the male that molested me. And when somebody smiles and does the same thing that they do, I cringe. And I just sit there and people are like, what's wrong with your face? So it instantly shuts down my mood. Sometimes because of my experiences, when I have too much alcohol in my system or something like that, I automatically go into a vigilante mode and protective. So I automatically feel the need to defend myself, because why? I feel too vulnerable and exposed when I'm under the influence. So now I go into safety mode, right? All of these different things are tied to things that happen. You don't even realize it. You know what I mean? So that's just some stuff.
No, that's some really good points. And I think me and you talked about this a couple last week actually, about what will happen if a person addresses their past trauma. And I do understand that a lot of times different experiences, whether it's sexual assault, domestic violence, physical, psychological abuse, sometimes that is a place that we don't want to go back to, right? Like one of the things for me as a child at a very young age, throughout my abuse, I had this mindset that if I put it in the back of my mind, I never had to think of it. It never would pop up. And they, at that time, when everything came out, I went to therapy for like a week and a half or whatever. And I do remember the therapist, one thing that she did say is something on the lines of, if you don't address it, it's going to come out in some point. And then you telling a freaking seventh, eighth grader this information. I don't know. I can't even mentally process what has happened all these years up to now. And then you telling me this, miss, I'm still going to just pretend like the shit didn't never happen. But she wasn't lying. Like you said, it will show up in different forms later on in your life. And what I have realized just from my own personal experience is, yes, doing the work is incredibly hard, right? Because the first part of breaking that cycle is facing them dark moments that got us to where we are today.
Going back.
All the way back. And, you know, getting down to the nitty gritty. And what I always tell people is, like, especially when you're in therapy, like I always recommend people do that part of trauma processing and stuff with a therapist, because no offense, but life coaches, they are not always equipped to help in those type of areas. Some, yes, but not all. When you work it out with a therapist, like your therapist was able to connect the dots from like your childhood in the military, and then you got into the gangs, the fraternities. A life coach may not have picked up all of that. Shoot, I'm sitting here and all like, what the hell? Like, I didn't even think of it in that way. But when you start to process things, you realize, a lot of your behaviors and actions are just trauma responses, but all of those things could be adjusted and changed for the betterment of your healing.
Yep.
of your
Yep,
healing.
absolutely.
So do you feel like, and this is just something I just wanted to randomly ask, because you mentioned a lot of like rage and anger during that point of your life. Do you feel like those parts of you still exist today?
Talking about the rage and anger, I've released a lot of my rage.
Mhm.
However, let me say this because I need everybody to understand this. You will constantly be in a battle. Okay. Like healing is a process. That's why I said that we're all like sort of healed. You know what I mean? It's a process, right? And you're going to be going through that process for the rest of your life, right? Because you are traumatized and it just doesn't go away. And there are triggers there. You're going to learn how to manage them better. You're going to learn how to avoid certain things that could put you in that space. You're going to know how to mitigate. You know what I'm saying? You're going to know how to redirect and all of these different things that you can do. However, you're going to constantly deal with it. So, yes, do I still have that motherfucker inside of me? Absolutely. However, I'm better at being able to handle that. So the thing that I can really take, if you're a person that responds in anger, if you're more of an angry person, always think about consequences. The biggest thing that I learned as a person that used to have a temper and rage is that everything that I do has a consequence. And I literally have to remind myself of that all the time before. So let me teach you something very, very important. Anything that you do starts with a thought. It always does. You have to think it before. And I'm going to tell you why. Let me tell you a situation where somebody did something to piss you off. Somebody said, "You're ugly." You know what you had to do first? You had to repeat that in your mind. "You're ugly." And then you had to think of all the reasons why you should be upset about that. And it happened within a couple of seconds. And you were like, "Hold on, ugly? Who does this person think they are?" And then you responded in what? In anger. But within that period of time, you had the choice to not do it. This is the reason why they say do the 10-second count, right? The 1, 2, 3, 10, right? Because that gives you time to process and slow down your thinking, right?
Right.
So now that you realize that your emotions are actually stemmed by your thoughts and how you perceive something, because remember, perceived threat is what causes fight or flight. That's our base instinct. So the way I see things, the way I think it is, the way I interpret it is going to be how I respond. So if you're a person that's based in rage, you have to do something really quick. You have to say, "Hold on 1 second. Why should I be mad about this?" Because you have the opportunity to do that. You really can say, "Okay," because you're only mad because you think you should be mad. One day I realized that I was getting mad about things because I thought I should be mad about it, but I wasn't really mad. But let's say, you remember when you was a kid and then you wasn't mad about something, but then your friends start laughing, then you got mad.
Yeah.
You remember that? Everybody did that, right? Because you process, you like, "Hold on 1 second, man." Or somebody was like, "You gonna let that man get away with that? Or let that girl get away?" And now you're like, "Yeah, you're
Like they
right."
punking you.
You're conditioned, right? You're conditioned now that you've been trained by society and all these different things that this is something that should bother you. When honestly, you could be like, "I choose not to let this bother me because I am in control." When you start to realize that you're the person in control of you, then any response is up to you. Why? Because you're responsible, even if it's their fault. That's something, oh man, that was a big learn for me. It can be someone else's fault, but it's always your responsibility when it comes to you, right? Oh yeah, that person did fault you. That person was wrong. They did wrong and they have to handle that in their own. And yes, they shouldn't have done that. But now what are you going to do with that? Because you're responsible for what your next steps are. You are. And you can either choose to stay within that state of being a victim, or you can go from victim to survivor, from survivor to overcomer, to overcomer to conqueror. You can go through this whole little process, but it's a choice that you have to make because you have to realize I'm in control. So when I have these moments when I want to spaz out and go crazy about stuff, I have to remind myself, man, I'm in control. And honestly, you also have to be very mindful not to respond for other people that's around you. Be very wary of that. There are people who can get you into stuff, especially if you have trauma, because they'll be the person that actually activates that trigger. They'll be like, "Man, if that was me, it ain't you." Stop you right there. If that was me, people, kick them to the curb, because it ain't you and it ain't me, and we're not doing it. So, oh man, if that was me, because that gets a lot of people in trouble. A lot of people are literally probably sitting in prison and different things because of if that was me person. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So know that you're in control and your response is something that you're responsible for. There's always a consequence to everything that you do. So when you think about the consequences before you react and you understand that you're responsible, you should be able to deter or change the direction of what you do. So that's what I would say.
you know, it's like, because I think our minds are like connected, because I always say it doesn't matter what happens to you. Okay, let me reword this. It doesn't matter what someone does to you, right? Mm-hmm. A person can cut you. That's okay. But you're responsible for the healing and the nurturing of that cut. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. When you do not address it and you just stay being a victim, you give that person power over the whole situation and you, mm-hmm. you know, because I'm this way because they did that to me. I'm this way because she said that to me. Okay. What I'm hearing is you are the person you are because of someone else. Where do you step in it and be like, you know what? I need to take my power back. I need to take control of things. And I'm so glad that you used the word choice so many times, because mm-hmm. it is a choice. It's a choice. But what I will say is we have to mentally get to that space where we know we have that choice, because being a victim of sexual assault mm-hmm. or any type of abuse, our control is taken from us. Our control is, is taken from us. And that is something I feel like a lot of people, situations, they differ.
You perceive that our control is taken from us. So we think that, right? This is where it gets us, right? You're only a victim once, right? So like, catch what I'm saying. You're a victim once. Right? When it happened, in the act of it happening, not saying that it can't happen multiple times and everything, but when you're on the outside of this experience, you're not a victim anymore. Like, that's over. You were a victim then, mm-hmm. but you're not a victim anymore, right? So you're only that victim that one time, you know what I'm saying? Even if it encompasses a multitude of times in that space, you're that victim, right? So now when you're outside of that, you're no longer a victim. Mm-hmm. So in that situation, so, a lot of times, they say that sexual assault, and all these different abuse and all that is about power, right? It's about, somebody trying to, validate their own power by, stealing yours. I don't feel like they ever steal our power. They don't. Mm-hmm. I feel like we perceive that they do. And I think that's the most important thing that I've learned. Our mind is so powerful, and we have to be aware of that, because what we think is what actually will become. So if I think they've taken my power, they have, because I've given it to them. But if I don't, think about how many people were enslaved, right? We go back to slavery. How many people were enslaved? If everybody was to accept being a slave, we wouldn't be where we are today. But some people were saying, I am not a slave. Somebody like Kunta Kinte. To everybody else, you're a slave. You got taken on a boat. You're on a plantation, but he was never a slave here, right? Same thing with women that were being oppressed. You're not smart. Women are not to the caliber of men. If you were to believe that here, then that's the reality. But the people who realized that was not real, that is not in actuality, were the people who stood at the forefront of the women's rights movements, the civil rights movements, and all of these type of things that happen, right? So no, they don't take your power. You perceive that. And once you actually come back to realizing that never really happened, right? Not saying your experience didn't happen, because they definitely harmed you, but they never took your power, right? Mm-hmm. They just wanted you to feel that way, because you're always in control of you. No one is in control of you but yourself. You're always in control. So once you realize that, yes, I'm in control, I have that power, then you start to be like, you know what? I'm not a victim anymore. Because that victim is that person who believes or perceives that someone else has taken their power, when in actuality, they haven't. That's why they keep doing it. If they took your power, why do they have to keep coming back? Think about that.
Yeah, you just gave me something to think about from another perspective. I can't say that I agree fully with that. I can't say that I disagree fully. I definitely understand the angle you're coming at. But again, like how my mind is processing this for right now, speaking in this present moment, is you, like the last thing you said, like they never, like you always was in control. And someone that's listening may think like, but I didn't have any control at this time. Like I couldn't get this person off of me, or I couldn't get this person to stop. And in that instance, I didn't have control. I felt small. This person overpowered me. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely understand the angle. I get you where you're coming from with the perception of something, but my mind is not fully wrapping around it right now. In the instance of me thinking about going through what I went through, I didn't have the control. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? You know what I'm
Okay, I
saying?
think I get what you're saying. Okay, you're saying, because I know what you're talking about, especially when someone is doing something to you and they're overpowering you.
Yes.
Right? That right there is something that is, one, devastating. Two, I know I've been there, right? So I totally understand where you're coming from. So I think what I'm trying to say is, you ever, I think there was a philosopher, it might have been Boethius, I think. I can't remember. This was a long time ago. But he said something along the line. He was in prison and he wrote all of these things about beauty and wisdom and everything like that. And his final thing was something along the lines of, he's not a prisoner because he wasn't a prisoner here in his mind, right? So they were like, but you're in prison. But he was like, no, I'm not. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm talking about is no longer being a prisoner in here, your mind. Not that taken away and diminishing from the harm. That's why I said I don't want to take away from the harm. The harm happened. That did occur. But I don't want anybody to feel like someone has their power, because it's in you. You get what I'm saying? It's in the inside. And that person keeps coming to keep beating you down, to try to take parts and pieces away from you, to convince you in your mind that they've taken it, right? But you still have your power because it's in you.
Yeah.
It's in your mind. It's in your heart. It's in your will. It's in your strength. It's in your determination. It's in your perseverance. It's the fact that we're having this conversation right now has already let me know that they haven't taken your power, right? So I'm talking about it from that perspective, right? But, oh yeah, they definitely physically assaulted us. They definitely harmed us. They definitely took advantage of us. They definitely did things to us that we didn't want, that hurt us, that made us cry, that made us feel like we were broken, that made us feel like we were awful and that we were wrong and we felt like we did something bad, and we went through that. Yeah, absolutely. But I want to remind you, you still have your power because your power is in you, and they never took that away from you, because no coward like that, no weak individual like that could ever take the power from a strong person like you.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Sorry. Had a moment.
Oh, the allergies? It was the allergies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man,
allergies.
no, but allergies been turning me up, boy.
Woo, Chile.
But no, I appreciate your kind words, and like I said at the time, I didn't process it like that. I understood what you were saying, but I'm like, wait a minute, I definitely get it now. It makes more sense. So thank you for explaining that to me and to anyone else that may have been thinking Like I was thinking, because I'm like, wait a second, like
I'm glad you
no,
made me explain it because I definitely didn't want to be misinterpreted. So I'm glad you made me
yeah,
say it.
yeah, and
They're
I'm
gonna
like,
be
wait,
like, you're like, you're wrong. I'm
no,
like,
see,
hold
this
on,
is
wait.
yeah, so this is, why it's good to listen to things entirely, but also to ask questions. And, if you don't know, like, hey, can you break this down? But again, this is a like a kind of like a complex topic because everyone's level of healing and perception of how they see themselves or where they're at is different. It looks different for a
Mhm.
lot of us. Our experiences of sexual trauma or whatever form of abuse was different. So
Mhm.
like the conversations me and you had prior, I'm very gentle when in approaching the situation, and I do that because everyone don't consider themselves a victim, and that's perfectly
Mhm.
fine. Some people are, I'm a survivor of this. Some
Mhm.
people don't have a label, and
Yeah.
that's their prerogative. So when you're talking about this topic and you're trying to raise awareness about the different things and forms of abuse and the cycles and healing and all these things, I think it's very important to be open-minded that
Mhm.
abuse in itself, especially sexual abuse, does not have an image. It
Bing.
doesn't have an image. Just to give a brief example, you have so many celebrities that have come forward that are standing in their power in raising awareness with their voice about being sexually assaulted. The one that comes to mind specifically right now is Gabrielle Union. You know, talks about being sexually assaulted when she was 19 at gunpoint. you know
Mm.
Recently, a couple months ago, the singer Kaylani was finishing up a performance and her security was walking her like through the crowd to get to the back, and someone went
Mhm.
up her skirt and into her panties. Why were they able to get that close? I don't
But you got
know.
some bad security.
Yeah, and another thing, when she spoke out about it, she definitely said, like, I know I'm perceived a certain way because of my music and my performances. However, I'm still a human, and you shouldn't violate
Absolutely.
anyone like that. The point of me saying all that to say is, looking at each of those women, you would not know that they have experienced some type of sexual abuse unless they said something. Tyler Perry, I think it was Tyler
Mhm.
Perry that as Common,
Terry
they have.
Crews.
Yes, they have been sexually abused. Looking at these men, you would not perceive them to be sexual abuse survivors, but they
Mhm.
are. And you only know because they talk about it, they wrote about it in their books and stuff. So don't judge a book by its character. Remain open-minded when having these conversations with people. And I always say, I hate to hear people say, like, for people that don't immediately, quotation marks, report their situations, well, it must not have been that serious because you didn't say nothing immediately. And it's always
Mm.
people that never have experienced abuse making these freaking corrupt uh points. That's not even a
Or
valid point.
they're predators themselves.
Okay.
Right. So it's an interesting
Okay.
thing. Because you know what's funny? I think I wrote a poem about this. And it's kind of like a free form poem, but I was talking about the scary thing about being a human is that we can't see the face of the predator anymore. They said that in the animal kingdom, predators have, certain features that allow those who will be their prey to recognize them, which is that everything is in the front. So if you notice a lot of predatory animals, their eyes and nose and mouths are in the front, kind of like humans, right?
Mm-mm.
But for a lot of, like, let's say more docile animals like deer, notice birds, they're kind of to the side. They're like herbivores. They're not really like
I have a deer
predatory
phobia right
creatures.
now, so
But
no.
I'm saying
I've
that physical characteristic, there's some interesting thing. But they don't be trying to harm you. They just be running in front
no.
of vehicles.
I like, this is totally off topic, but I was diagnosed with Lyme disease last summer,
Mhm.
and it was because like of I got, you get bit by a tick or whatever, but it was a very specific type of tick. It's a deer tick.
A deer tick. I didn't even know that existed.
I think that's what they call it. I can't remember, but this shit, it has to do with deers. The particular bite that I had, which was Lyme disease. And the only place I could have got it was where I go running at this big park that's like wooded or whatever. And it does be deers out there. And after that, I've had the weirdest deer phobia.
I don't blame you. I can
Ever.
understand,
Like,
especially if I get Lyme disease. Like, I'm not messing with deer. I'm not eating venison no more. Like, don't even say deer in the beginning of your email, okay? Like, don't play.
No, it's really something. So now when I go out, I'm like, okay, Shakita, you're safe. They're not out here. You're safe. And I know that may sound extremely crazy, but like trauma and phobias are like real from your past experiences with things. But anyway, getting back on topic. So as we wrap this conversation up, because there's been a lot of, I feel like, good awareness raised from, you telling your story, the parts that you were comfortable with sharing, different aspects that I input. One thing that I want to ask you is, right now in your life, after enduring everything that you have with the abuse and stuff, do you still perceive like relationships the same that you did back then now?
No, I mean, I've grown past a lot of that. Like I said, therapy, doing the work, but like it's a constant thing, right? Because you're gonna meet people that's gonna trigger you from those, they're gonna have characteristics. And it may not be that same thing, but because think about this, the people that harmed you were people. The people that harmed you were people who did normal people stuff too. But now, because they harmed you, somebody else might come into your life who does normal people stuff, and it looks like something they did, and you're like, predator.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's gonna mess with your relationship. So you really got to be vigilant. You got to really be intentional. You got to be aware and be like, wait, let me not take this and let me let my trauma bleed into this relationship. Let me give you your free space to show me who you are. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I handle relationships. Where I'm like, okay, well, let me get in. And if I do start to get out of pocket, I'll be like, hold on one second. Let me see. Is this because I'm responding because of something real, or am I doing this because I'm being triggered by some of my previous experiences, And it gets really, really, really deep when you have complex trauma, because now you have them like this, you know what I mean? So you got to really unpack a lot, so. But I've actually been able to, develop some really close relationships, platonic and romantic in my life. And I think it's definitely helped me to grow as a person. And just having people who are able to be real and to be open and be understanding, I think that's really important as well. So you got to, be mindful that there are other people who are traumatized, and don't trauma bond. Trauma bond is very unhealthy, and y'all both will just damage each other further because y'all both ain't in the space to be handling it. So if you're feeling like something is just a little bit too much, you know what I'm saying? And it's a little bit too toxic and cute. You know what I'm saying? I know we make it seem like it because it's the popular culture, but toxic is not cute. If it's toxic, we need to go ahead and back away. And y'all both need to address your traumas, because all y'all doing is just bleeding your traumas on each other. And that blood is becoming intoxicated. And that's what it is.
Yes, we don't need no more Blueface and Krishans, please.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Like, no, baby. Like, no, yes. And I have a belief that like you said, like we probably won't never be 100% healed from different encounters we've experienced, but I have a belief that you shouldn't get involved with someone on that serious level if you know that you're not at a certain level of healing, because Absolutely. I feel like a lot of times people will look for that person to fill that void and heal them, which maybe I can't heal you. I can assist you in the process, but the ultimate healing is going to reside in you.
Absolutely. You are totally correct.
Reside in you. So thank you so much again for your insight. One more thing I want to sneak in here. You mentioned something about having a daughter. Do you still have like an active relationship? Like, are you able to like manage that now with
it's a shaky situation. I'm trying to work through that now. When I joined the military, I signed away all my parental rights and custody and everything like that. So I really don't have any real rights. That's a shaky situation that I'm still trying to work through. So that's a lot, but
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine, but I also can't say that and I mean this with the utmost respect. I can't say that I like fault you for that decision because of what the circumstances were. you were a kid. Like, that is a lot. So, but I wish you much success at whatever, process or outcome that you have with that situation. But again, I'm sorry that you had to endure all of that stuff, even the parts that you did not share today. Like, that's okay, because you didn't deserve any of that. And I hope that you never have a day. We all have bad days, but I hope that you don't never doubt yourself at the level that you're at right now, opposed to where you were before. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've overcome so much. You're pouring back into yourself as needed, and you're helping other people by standing in your power, being your real authentic self, and speaking your truth. This is your truth. A lot of us, it's not that, for me, like, it's not that I don't have the courage to, right? And I listen back to some of the stuff that I say on these episodes. When I talk about my story, I realized recently, literally recently, that a part of me is probably still protecting that individual, but it's not for his sake. It's just, it is a very complex situation with it
I
being,
get it.
so in no shape or form do I want to protect that person at all, because they definitely didn't protect me. However, other parties that are involved, it's just a lot. Like, oh, I don't want to hurt
Yeah.
this person, I don't
Yeah,
want to.
it'll turn chaotic.
Yeah, it's just a lot. So from that point, I just know that, like, the focus is me. You know what I'm saying? Like, the focus is ultimately me. But I'm out here thriving as much as I can, hoping that my story, or just anything that I've said in general, is helping someone else, but also people like yourself and anyone else that I bring on that tell a story or raise awareness about a situation, is helping people. Everyone does not know what this looked like, so hopefully with this conversation and more to come, people have more awareness around it. People will become more open-minded to just other people's situations and show more empathy and grace. Like,
Yeah.
I'm big on the whole grace thing,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
So in closing, what is something, how I always end, something motivating or encouraging that you have for someone that's listening? um I give you two options: someone that may be supporting someone that's going through like a sexual trauma, or someone that is experiencing it, have experienced their own sexual trauma, and they may be struggling.
I would say that remember that we're all in individuals having a shared experience, right? So you're not alone. That's number one. Remember this, you're not alone. That gets us all. You're not alone, right? Your story matters. Um, Reach out, you know what I'm saying, and try to touch people who can relate to you so that y'all can come together and be able to help each other in the process. I think you also have to become aware, like I said, that you still have that power. It's still in you. Just come back to yourself and give yourself that grace, right? We talk about giving grace to others, but you got to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Understand that you have value. You really do. You wouldn't be here without value. I seen a video the other day that said something really dope. He said, think about how many people weren't born. We always talk about how many people were born and are alive. Think about how many people weren't born. Think about, if you go back to conception, all of the tiny cells that were swimming towards that egg that didn't make it, and you made it. So you actually have a reason to be here. Think about the trillions and trillions. And he's like, there's probably trillions and trillions, much more people that weren't born than actually made it here. And that's why you should realize you're valuable. Just that little piece right there. You made it and you're still here. And number four, number three, I'll niche one, you still have the opportunity to shape the future that you want. You'll be okay. You will be okay. You know what I'm saying? You will, because I've made it and I've been there. I've been through the trenches. I've been through the darkness. I've been at suicide's door. I've been angry. I've been bitter. I've been hurt. I've questioned. I've looked at God and wondered why. I've been there. I've been there with you. And I'm still walking this road with you too. So trust me, if I can do it, you can do it too. Ain't nothing special about me. Nothing. Nothing at all. I am just like you. Just like you, walking this journey every day, making decisions every day, choosing to fight the good fight every day. And that's because I've come to realize that I'm valuable, and you should realize that too. Because like I said, we're individuals having a shared experience.
Lovely. Beautifully said. And I'm pretty sure someone listening appreciates your words of encouragement. What I want to end on is two things. Something that I also heard recently too is they said to take care of yourself like you take care of others. And to break it down to make it make more sense is a lot of times we put so much more into everyone else, so much more effort, so much more love, care, support, and we drown ourselves in nothing. The way you take care of all of those other people, flip it around and do it for yourself. And that's like the great saying is, you can't pour from an empty cup, and you want to make sure you're always running over. So definitely take care of yourself. And the second thing that I wanted to say was, I think I forgot, honestly, at this point. It's just been so much. I really do think I forgot. And that's okay. It'll come to me later on. But yes, continue to take care of yourself. And like you said, show not only everyone else grace, but show yourself grace. Because that grace, even if you only have an ounce of it in you, will go a long fucking way.
Super far.
Okay. Super far. So thank you again, sir, for this conversation. I'm pretty sure we will be having more discussions in the future because you're about to launch that good old podcast soon. I remember what date you told me, so I'm gonna hold you to it. Oh. So yeah. Do you want to share your social medias and if people want to connect with you where they can? And also give the titles of your books again and where they can purchase them at.
My social media, my Instagram is at e.n.n.u.n, pretty much my name.
Little Instagram.
My TikTok is Alter Ego Motivation, because I just started getting on TikTok, so now I feel important.
I see you in the streets.
I feel like I'm with the trend. You see what I'm saying? I'm here now. My Twitter, which I don't use that often, but I'm actually going to start using, is actually Mike Q Speaks _ I think, but I'm going to change that to the e.n.n.u.n. So that's going to get changed soon. So don't worry about that. And then my book is, one is Hopeful, an African American horror story. Another one is Unmasking the Truth Behind I'm Good. And the third one is coming out, which is going to be The Uncommon Sense. You can find the two on Amazon. And of course, the third one that I'm going to put out is going to be on Amazon as well. So you can look that up. And hey, it's a good read to give you some good insight.
Yeah. And to simplify that, I will put the social medias in the description so you guys can go tap in with him if you choose to. He's a nice person sometimes, but he might disappear on you once in a while, but he's still cool.
Oh my God. I'll be here, man. People just gotta text me sometime. Phone works both ways.
Oh, shots fired. All right. We're gonna end this on a positive note. But again, thank you so much for this conversation. It was very filling. I can't really explain that right now, but I'm pretty sure you may interpret that. So thank you for helping me, raise more awareness around this topic overall. And I hope that this conversation resonated with someone that is listening. If not, that's okay. I hope it gave you some type of awareness on the subject matter. But of course, if you know someone that this conversation may resonate with, please by all means do share. And yeah. All of his information will be in the description box, along with my social medias, where you guys can continue to tap in with me as well. Please stay tuned for some more lovely awareness episodes this month. If you guys want to chat, my DMs are always open. You can also reach out to me through email. Let's see if I can get this right. Chronicles of a Virgo 22 at gmail.com. So, yes, come tap in with me on social media. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Govern yourself accordingly. Chronicles of a Virgo on all of those. You got listen, I gotta put out a disclaimer for Twitter. But yes, Chronicles of a Virgo podcast on all of those platforms. So yeah, come tap in with your girl and tap in with Mr. Ennun. And yeah, guys, thanks for joining us for this conversation. And we are out.